Chapter 11, The Joust. John sat at the long table, surrounded by the sons and daughters of prominent lords, waiting for the feast to begin. The only thing left was the procession of the king and queen. There had nearly been a fight between Jamie and Kevin over seating arrangements, but Jamie refused to back down. If John couldn't sit at the high table, he would take a place of equal importance, and that was final. John knew that if the Tyrells hadn't been seated at the high table, Jamie would have insisted he sit there, and he couldn't help but admire him for it. Looking around the table, John noticed the two Tyrell boys and their sister sitting opposite him. At the end of the table sat Lancel and the Redwine boys, none of whom were his favorite company. The Royce boys were chatting with two lads from the Stormlands, whose names John didn't know, while a group of girls from the Riverlands had been placed as far from him as possible at the Tullis request. He sighed, realizing it wasn't just Caitlin who held a grudge against him. Suddenly, the doors opened, and the procession began. The king and queen led the way, both wearing expressions that suggested they would rather be anywhere else. Jamie accompanied Lady Olenna, followed closely by Lord Mace and his wife. Lord Arryn walked slowly behind them, while Tyrion strolled alongside a stunningly beautiful blonde woman, one of the Hightowers, he thought. Behind them were Jerian and his sister Jenna, with Kevin and Lady Dorna bringing up the rear. As they reached the high table and took their seats, the rest of the guests followed suit. Finally. "I thought they'd take forever," Garland said with a grin. "Grandmother looks happy," Loras remarked, glancing at his sister. "Well, as happy as she ever is," he added, earning an admonishing glare from Marjorie. "Lord Jamie was very gallant in accompanying her, don't you think so, John?" Marjorie asked, a lopsided smile on her face. John felt his throat tighten as he responded. As John realized he was being addressed, he turned to Marjorie and caught the amusement dancing in her eyes. It was a playful kind of amusement, not mean-spirited at all. Lord Jamie is very gallant, Lady Marjorie," he replied. "Just Marjorie," she said, her smile growing warmer. "Of course, just Marjorie," John echoed, and they both burst into laughter. Garland and Loras exchanged puzzled glances as the two continued to chuckle. Marjorie then turned to her brothers. "A private joke, Marge?" Garland asked. "Not exactly private. When I first met John, I called him Lord John, but he insisted he was just John. Later, when I saw him again, his young lady insisted he had a different name," she explained, raising an eyebrow at John. "Yawn," John said, prompting another round of laughter from the group. Garland and Loras looked at each other, then back at their sister and Lord Jamie's page, still unsure of what was so funny. "So where is young Joy tonight? Did she not accompany you?" Marjorie asked, finally regaining her composure. "No, my lady. It's well past her bedtime, and once she hears her story, she's out like a light." "Are you the storyteller then?" Garland chimed in, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Aye, my lord," John admitted sheepishly, glancing at the still smiling Marjorie. "What did you think of the melee, John?" Loras inquired. "It was good, my lord. It made me eager for the duels." "John, he's Loras, my brother's Garland, and I'm Marjorie." "If we can call you by your name, then you should do the same," Marjorie said, her tone firm. "It wouldn't be proper, my lady," John replied. "It would be if we wished it, John," she insisted with determination. "You'd better listen to her, John. When my sister makes up her mind, it's best to just go along with her," Garland added quickly. "Especially when I'm right," Marjorie said playfully, giving her brother a light nudge on the shoulder. John sat there with a smile on his face, feeling the warmth of their camaraderie. John glanced down the table, catching sight of Lancel and the terrible twins glaring at him. He quickly turned back to Marjorie and her brothers. Loras and Garland were animatedly chatting with each other, but Marjorie's attention was fixed on him, her lopsided grin making his smile widen even more. At the high table, Jamie sat next to Lady Olenna, with the king on his right already beginning to indulge and drink, while his sister fumed beside him. Lord Mace and Lord Arryn were deep in discussion, much to Lady Olenna's annoyance. Normally, this would have amused Jaime, but his focus was drawn to Jon's table instead. He noticed Jon, completely captivated, as Lady Margaery spoke to him. The young man was hanging on her every word, reminding Jaime of himself in his youth when Cersei had the power to make everything else fade away during their conversations. Jaime turned to Lady Olenna, eager to lighten the mood. "Your granddaughter seems to be enjoying herself, Lady Olenna. Was it your idea to seat a bastard at my granddaughter's table, Lord Jaime?" She scowled. "Jon is an honorable lad, my lady. As his page, it's my duty to place him in a position worthy of him. And a table with his betters is worthy of him?" She challenged. "Jon has no betters, my lady." "You think very highly of the boy, Lord Jaime." "I do, my lady. Jon is a remarkable young man." "In spite of his birth?" she asked, probing. "No, my lady, because of it." Jaime noticed the surprise on her face and decided it was time to shift the conversation before he revealed too much. "I wish to discuss some matters with you, my lady, when you have the time." "Oh? And what matters are those, my lord?" "Relations between the Reach and the West have never been, shall we say, cordial." "Indeed, Lord Jaime, they—" "I haven't," Jaime replied, recalling his father's words. "Oh yes, he often said that we reached too far." "My father was a man often blind to his own faults," Olenna remarked, her tone laced with mockery. "And you, my lord?" she challenged, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, me? I'm well aware of my faults, my lady." The two locked eyes, and Jaime noted the shift in Olenna's expression from suspicion to intrigue, finally settling on curiosity. He found that curiosity to be a good sign, as long as it was directed at him and not Jon. Meanwhile, Ser Barristan surveyed the room for threats, but his gaze frequently drifted to a dark-haired boy at the lower table. The boy was animatedly conversing with the Tyrell children, who were peppering him with questions about the duels, while the young lady inquired about Joy. Barristan found it odd. What could a young boy possibly know about Joy? Earlier, he'd been drawn to the boy's frowns, curious looks, and that smile. There was something about that smile that nearly stopped his heart. It felt familiar, as if he should know him. Frustration bubbled within him at his inability to place it. "Of course, Lord Hand. If my family can help, we'll gladly do so," Lord Tyrell's voice cut through Barristan's thoughts, grating on him. "I thank you, Lord Tyrell." "The Crown will, of course, be very grateful," Barristan replied, forcing a polite tone. "Don't mention it, my lord." "Oh, I don't believe you've met my granddaughter, have you, Lord Hand?" Barristan shook his head, irritated. Subtle as ever, Mace. He loathed this Game of Thrones, where nobles sparred with words for scraps from the king's table. He turned to look at the king, who was already drunk again, groping the serving girls while his wife sat beside him, visibly disgusted. This was not a man worth serving, not like his prince would have been, a man truly worthy of respect. Jorah sat beside Ser Wylis, reflecting on the day's events. They had both performed admirably, but Jorah couldn't help but think the drunken priest was a bit mad as he glanced at Thuras. The priest had been relentless, and Jorah was relieved he hadn't faced the fiery blade himself. His gaze drifted to the high table, and there she was, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. His breath caught in his throat. Was she looking at him? Surely not. He nodded at her anyway, and when she smiled, his heart felt like it might burst from his chest. "Isn't that right, Ser Jorah?" Wylis's jovial voice broke his reverie. "Sorry, Will, what was that?" "I was saying that today's fight was one for the tails, two Northmen evenly matched, battling for over an hour." "Aye, Ser Wylis, it was. You fought like a true warrior, and I was lucky to take the day." He raised his tankard and clinked it against Wylis's. "The North remembers," he declared loudly. "Aye, the North remembers," Ser Wylis replied, and they both laughed heartily. At another table, Tyrion sat nursing a pounding headache while his uncle, Geryon, was being his usual boisterous self. It wasn't that Geryon was annoying, but by the 7, the man could be overwhelming when people were nursing a hangover. Tyrion knew his uncle never seemed to suffer the morning after sickness, and if Geryon had a secret to his resilience, he kept it to himself. "Cheer up, Tyrion. Here, drink this," Geryon said, handing him a small cup. "What is it?" Tyrion asked, eyeing the concoction warily. "Trust me, nephew." Tyrion nodded and downed the contents of the cup. Within a minute, his stomach began to churn. He shot a look at his smiling uncle, as if to ask, "Why me?" before leaping up and rushing for the privy, nearly colliding with Jon as he bolted for the door. The surprise on the boy's face almost made Tyrion laugh. He ran as fast as his short legs would carry him, reaching the privy just in time. As he stepped inside, his stomach emptied, but within moments, he started to feel better. Once he left the privy, each step back to the hall made him feel more like himself. By the time he reached the table and drank a cup of water, the nausea and headache had faded. "What was in that cup, uncle?" Tyrion asked. "Just a remedy I picked up," Geryon replied, his ever-present smirk on his face. "We should market it, uncle. It'd make us rich." "Tyrion, we are rich," Geryon said, nudging Jon. "Well, richer than Uncle Geryon's morning elixir," Tyrion joked. Jon looked on in amusement as Tyrion tried to convince Geryon to either share the recipe or whip up another batch. He broke his fast with a small oatcake, saving one for later. After they finished eating, he and Tyrion would ride to Lannisport for a meeting with Ser Wylis, and Jon felt a twinge of nervousness. Setting up the meeting had been easy, but actually helping Tyrion negotiate was another matter entirely. Jaime was placing a lot of faith in him, and the thought of disappointing him weighed heavily on Jon's mind. He noticed Tyrion waiting for him and quickly finished his meal so they could be on their way. The meeting needed to happen early, allowing Ser Wylis time to prepare for the joust, which upset Jon since it meant less time with Joy. "Will you be bringing Joy to the joust, Geryon?" he asked the older man. "I'm afraid not, Jon. The noise might be too much for her, and I worry about what she'd think if she saw a horse get hurt." "Of course. I'll try to pop in and see her before the joust, then." "Thanks, lad. I'll let her know. No doubt she'll ask for you when I go to see her." Jon nodded as he and Tyrion left the hall, quickly making their way to their horses. Despite Tyrion's preference for a slower pace, they had a meeting to attend. They didn't ride slowly, instead, they pressed hard toward Lannisport. Upon arriving in town, Allers and Jors took care of the horses while Tyrion and Jon made their way to the tavern to meet Ser Wylis. They found him sitting alone for once, his guards lounging against the wall. "Ah, Lord Tyrion, Jon, it's good to see you came so early." "I worried you'd be late," Ser Wylis said. "Of course not, good Ser. We wouldn't dream of it," Tyrion replied as he took his seat. "So, what can I do for you both?" "My brother sent me to discuss a trading arrangement with you, Ser Wylis," Jon said. "Trading? Lord Tyrion, I'm not aware we have such an arrangement," the man responded, clearly confused. "Indeed not, Ser Wylis. But I believe Lord Jaime and I would like to rectify that situation," Tyrion added. "So, what items would you like to trade?" "Wood and ships, my lord, along with a discussion on mutually beneficial trading routes," Tyrion said, gesturing to Jon, who handed him a couple of pieces of paper. "We also have ore and minerals, good craftsmanship, weapon making, and our own trading centers to help develop trade further," Tyrion continued, reviewing the documents. The two men spoke for over an hour, but no agreement was even close to being reached. Ser Wylis seemed distrustful of the Lannister motives, and Tyrion felt his temper rising with each question the man posed. "Ser Wyllis, I don't know what else I can say to you," Tyrion said, exasperation clear in his voice. My lord, not sure what there is to say," Ser Wyllis replied. "You two are behaving like idiots," Jon interjected, stunning both men. "Careful, Snow. You may be my liege lord's son, but that doesn't give you the right," Ser Wyllis began. "The right to what, good sir? To point out idiocy when it's clearly on display?" Jon shot back, anger evident in his tone. "Lord Tyrion and Lord Jaime are offering you something that your father and you would normally jump at. This deal allows for your family to make a great profit," Jon said. "It's larger than almost any deal you have at present, am I right?" Snow, that's true," Wyllis replied, noticing the angry look Tyrion shot him. "But a deal with the Lannisters is not one my father would go for." "And why is that, sir?" Jon asked, placing his hand on Tyrion's arm and shaking his head. "How can we trust them, Snow? You know what the North thinks of them." "Ser Wyllis," Jon said, catching the man off guard, "what does the Reach think of your family? When you came north, what did the North think of them?" "But my father always said Lord Wyman is the smartest man in the North, and his loyalty is unquestioned," Wyllis defended, a hint of pride in his voice. He is that, Jon," Wyllis acknowledged, "but what has that got to do with this?" "Ser Wyllis, your family was once unwelcome in the Reach and suspected in the North. But the word of the Starks was good enough for that to be forgotten. Now you're treated with the respect your family deserves. No one dares say a Manderley isn't to be respected, lest my father hear of it." Wyllis said, his chest puffed out. "I may not carry my family's name, Ser Wyllis, but the blood of the Starks runs through these veins. Is that not so?" "It is, Jon. Let there be no doubt of that," Wyllis said, nodding his head. "The Lannisters have treated me with nothing but care and respect. My father trusted Lord Jaime, and so do I. He is not his father, sir. He is a different man, a better man. Knowing that, turning down this deal is not what I'd expect from Lord Wyman's heir." "You shame me, Jon," Wyllis said, his expression turning to one of embarrassment. "That's not my intention, Ser Wyllis. I just wanted you to understand that, like the Manderleys when they came north, the Lannisters are also worthy of a second chance." "Very well," Wyllis said. "I shall take this to my father. I'll recommend we sign it and let this deal bring our families and regions closer." "Together," Wyllis said, lifting his tankard and watching Tyrion do the same. "To the north and the west," Tyrion replied, clinking his tankard against Wyllis's. Meanwhile, Jorah walked over to his horse, its caparison displaying his house colors and sigil, the black bear emblazoned on both sides. He glanced down at the smoke-gray ribbon tied around his hand and smiled, thoughts of crowning the woman who had given it to him clear in his mind. She had surprised him by accepting his offer for a dance and, even more so, by granting him her favor. "My lady, would you honor me by giving me your favor?" he asked. "I would, my lord." "You would crown me then?" she replied. "My lady, I can think of no one more deserving of the title than you. Not even the queen. You would be the only queen I'd ever serve, my lady." His squire helped him mount the horse as he prepared to head to the arena. Jorah would be jousting first, facing Lord Jason Mallister in the opening round, a formidable opponent with more experience. But Jorah knew that Lord Jason didn't carry a favor from a beauty like Lynesse, and he was certain that would be his downfall today. As he approached the tilt yard, he spotted her in the stands, smiling at him. He picked up his lance and moved to the end of the run, casting a glance at Lord Jason at the opposite end. "Your graces, my lords and ladies, welcome to round 1 of the joust. Our first 2 competitors representing the Riverlands, Lord Jason Mallister, and representing the North, Ser Jorah Mormont." The crowd erupted in cheers as they were introduced. Jorah raised his lance and focused on the tilt yard ahead. At the herald's signal, the horses charged forward. His lance struck dead center against Mallister's shield, causing the other man to stumble but not fall. Yora barely felt the impact from Mallister as he turned back to his squire, who handed him another lance. Kicking his horse into gear, he charged once more. This time, the lance hit true, and he watched as Lord Mallister was unseated, flying from his horse. "Victory to Ser Yora," the herald announced, and cheers erupted from the crowd. Yora scanned the faces, searching for Liness. When he finally spotted her smiling, his heart soared. Meanwhile, Jaime sat watching the justs unfold. He felt a restless itch to join the competition, but as the host, he knew he couldn't compete. It frustrated him to see others vying for glory when he was certain he was better than most, if not all, of them. He witnessed Jon Royce defeat the Blackfish and Thuras fall to Lyle Crakehall, but his attention shifted as Gregor Clegane entered the tiltyard. The sight of the mountain stirred a deep anger in Jaime. He wanted nothing more than to kill him with his bare hands. What Clegane had done, and what his father had sent him to do, sickened him. The thought of Clegane walking around as a knight after his heinous acts filled Jaime with shame. He had to resist the urge to act. The mountain was not his to kill. Turning away from the joust, he caught a glimpse of Barristan, who was preparing to face Clegane. Barristan felt the muscles of his horse tense beneath him as he kicked it into action. The firm ride focused his mind on the challenge ahead. He could raise his lance and no one would know. No, he thought, I'd know. He lined up his lance and charged, striking true, but the mountain didn't budge. Quickly, Barristan returned for another lance and positioned himself once more. He charged again, and once again his lance found its mark, but the mountain barely moved. Luckily, Clegane's own lance work was average at best, and Barristan barely felt the impact against his shield. As they lined up for a third time, the crowd could almost hear the horses' breaths. Barristan's steed fared far better than his opponents, carrying his weight with ease compared to the colossal mountain. He shifted slightly in his saddle, lined up his lance, and charged once more, determined to bring the mountain down. With a smile, he watched as the mountain crashed to the ground. He didn't even bother to check if the man regained his footing. Instead, he began to ride away. But then he heard a groan. Turning back, he saw the mountain tearing off his helm and glaring at him. Did the man want to settle this with a sword? Apparently not, as he grimaced and turned to walk away. Jon cheered louder than almost anyone in the crowd when he saw the mountain unhorsed by Barristan, the bold knight himself. It was a thrilling sight, two knights, one the epitome of chivalry and the other the darkest of them all. Jon felt immense satisfaction at Barristan's victory. "It'd be best if we set guards on Clegane later," Tyrion said, drawing Jon's attention. "Why?" Jon asked. "Clegane is a bad loser, Jon. Who knows what he'll get up to if he's not under escort?" Geryon chimed in, and Tyrion nodded in agreement. Surely he wouldn't do anything here. This is his liege's land, after all. The mountain's a rabid dog. One day he'll bite even us, Tyrion whispered as he took a drink. Then why keep him around? Jon pressed. Clegane had his uses for my father, deplorable though they were. But Jaime's in charge now, Tyrion. Why keep a monster like him? Jon, it's complicated. What Clegane did, he did on my father's orders, so he didn't break any laws. He broke the laws of the gods and the laws of decency, Jon replied angrily. Aye, but he committed no crime in the eyes of the king. Believe me, there's nothing I'd like more than to see him suffer for what he did, but right now, there's nothing that can be done, Tyrion said, hoping to calm him down. Jon nodded, but if the mountain was innocent in the eyes of the king, that didn't bode well for the king himself. He looked up to see the king spilling more of his tankard over himself than he was drinking. Jon shook his head, frustrated. This wasn't how a king should behave. Yora was fuming. He had just beaten Hostine and Ryman Fry, and moments ago, he had dispatched Boros Blunt. While Lyness had cheered him on during those matches, now, as he prepared to face Lyle Crakehall, he saw Lyle's brother, Tybalt, talking to her and making her laugh. With determination, he grabbed the lance from his squire and urged his horse forward before the signal was even given. He charged down the field, his fury directed at the strong boar. The larger man should have presented a formidable challenge, but against an angry bear, he was no match. The impact of Yora's lance was so powerful that Lyle's own lance flew from his hand as he fell. The crowd gasped at the sound of his crash. Victory to Ser Yora. They cheered as Crakehall staggered to his feet. Yora nodded at him, his rage starting to fade as he turned his horse to leave. He glanced up at the stands and caught Lyness's gaze. The look in her eyes was one of desire, and he smiled back. She motioned to her favor resting in his hand, and in that moment, he knew it, she was his. Olenna sat beside her granddaughter, watching the joust with excitement. Though she had never been one for martial pursuits, the news her son had shared with her the night before filled her with glee. "Mother, we need to talk," Mace said, his tone serious. "What have you done now, Mace?" She replied, raising an eyebrow. "Nothing, Mother. I spoke with Lord Aaron. I saw that. What does the old falcon want?" "He asked for a loan, Mother. For the crown. It seems they need help covering costs. I'm not surprised, given how this king spends. So how much does he want?" 300,000 gold dragons, Mother." Olenna nearly choked on her wine. 300,000 gold dragons? Why on earth would they need that much? Surely the Lannisters would be willing to bail the crown out, unless... Of course, the young lion wasn't being as cooperative as they had hoped. This was a significant opportunity. With the Lannisters out of the equation, they could seize the moment. "And what did you tell them, Mace?" Olenna asked. "That we'd be delighted to help, of course, for certain considerations." It was rare for Olenna to feel pride in her son, but last night had been one of those few moments. She looked at him sitting beside Lord Aaron and felt it again. "Are you enjoying the day, Grandmama?" Marjorie inquired. "Very much so, my dear." "Have you spoken to the prince yet?" "I have, but he's so young, Grandmother." "He seems uninterested in everything," Marjorie replied, a frown creasing her brow. "Of course, my dear. But it's important that you engage him, even if he's too young to interest you." "I know. I'll do better." "I know you will, my dear. We have plenty of time." On the second day of the joust, Yora felt his adrenaline pumping. Yesterday, he had defeated Lord Wend after breaking 2 lances in the final tilt of the day. Now, he was just 2 victories away from crowning Lyness, but these next 2 would be the toughest. Facing him was Jon Royce, a man as solid as rock. Yora had already shattered 4 lances against him, and yet Jon remained steadfast. He lined up for the 5th tilt, raising his lance high. The favor on his wrist fluttered in the air as he charged forward. The lance struck Jon squarely, and while Yora felt the impact of Jon's hit, he was certain his blow had dealt more damage. It wasn't enough to unseat Jon, but it was clear it had hurt. After retrieving his 6th lance, Yora lined up again. The 2 men faced each other across the field, their horses eager to race. At the signal, they charged, and their lances struck true. Yora felt his shield slip from his hand, the force of the impact nearly tearing his arm from its socket. As he glanced at the riderless horse, realization dawned, he had won. Jon was unhorsed and staggering to his feet. The cheers of the crowd surged around him. The cheers of the crowd faded as Yora turned to see the beaming smile on Lyness's face. In stark contrast, Cersei was feeling incredibly bored. No, worse than that, she was infuriated. Earlier that day, she and Joff had encountered 2 bastards while breaking their fast. What annoyed her most was the fact that they were eating in the same place. The thought of bastards sharing a meal with royalty, especially in her own home, was unbearable. What was her brother thinking? Not that he had been thinking clearly lately. She had ordered the serving girl to remove them, but the girl had looked at her as if she had two heads. If they were in the Red Keep, she would have had the girl whipped for such insolence. But here at Casterly Rock, her brother was in charge, and that made her furious. When the girl failed to act, she sent Trant over to handle it. "Out now, bastard, and take the other little bastard with you," Trant commanded. "No, yon not Astrid," one of the boys retorted. "What did you say to me, you little?" Trant started. "I wouldn't finish that if I were you, sir," John interjected angrily as he stood up. "And why is that, bastard?" Trant sneered. "Because this young lady happens to be Lord Gerion's daughter, Joy." "Why oh why," the girl added emphatically. "His bastard daughter. Now, are you going to move, or do you want me to drag you out?" John challenged. "You do that, and it'll be the last thing you do, I promise you," John said, stepping toward Trant. "What the hell are you doing, Trant?" Jamie's voice boomed as he entered the hall. "Getting these two bastards out of the Queen and Prince's company," Trant replied arrogantly. "You will leave this hall now and are no longer welcome in my keep. Is that understood, Sir Marin?" Jamie said, squaring up to the now quivering man. "Who do you think you are, Kingslayer?" Trant spat. "I'm the Lord of Casterly Rock, the Warden of the West, and you will be removed from my presence either by your own feet or I'll have you carried out," Jamie declared as his and John's guards entered the room. "What's going on here?" Ser Barristan asked, stepping through the door. "I want this man out of here now, Ser Barristan. Either you do it, or I will." "But it will be done," Cersei insisted. "What the hell did you do, Ser Marin?" Barristan shouted at the man. "I was following the Queen's orders. She wanted the bastards Ser Marin never finished his sentence. Jamie's punch sent him sprawling to the floor. He quickly sprang up, reaching for his sword, but 5 swords were drawn and aimed at him in an instant. "Remove yourself, Ser Marin. Find somewhere else to stay. I'll take this up with His Grace and Lord Arryn later," Barristan commanded as Trant was escorted from the room. Cersei fumed. Her husband had dared to admonish her, the Queen. How could he force her to dine with scum and then blame her for trying to correct that wrong? The man was an oaf, a fool. Who did he think he was? The nerve of him to refuse his queen. Was that what Jamie was teaching him? She wouldn't stand for it. It was bad enough that Jamie felt he could act that way, but a lowly bastard? No, he would need to learn his place. Meanwhile, Barristan dismounted to help a fallen knight up. Sandor Clegane had proven him wrong both in the melee and the joust. For lances had struck flush against his chest, and in the end, Barristan felt the man had slipped more than been thrown from his horse. The fall had clearly done some damage, and the knight winced as Barristan offered his hand to help him stand. They exchanged nods, and Barristan prepared for the final round. "Your Graces, my lords and ladies, good men and women of the West, I now present to you the finalists of the joust, representing the crown, Ser Barristan the Bold, the Lord Commander of the King's Guard." The cheers from the crowd were deafening. And his opponent, representing the North, Ser Jorah Mormont, the Bear Knight. Jorah's cheers rang out just as loud. The two men sat on their horses, ready for the clash ahead. The two knights sat side by side on their horses, nodding to each other before making their way to their respective ends of the arena. Once they received their lances, they turned and awaited the signal from the king himself. "Good knights, I wish you both good fortune. Begin." The king announced, then belched loudly and turned to his squire to refill his cup. The horses charged forward with purpose, lances held firm as they crashed together, both knights striking their shields. They turned and began again, each tilt ending the same way. On the 4th tilt, Ser Barristan landed a hit, and on the 5th, Jorah struck back. By the 6th, Yora scored again. They lined up for the 7th time, both men clearly exhausted, yet they rode toward each other once more. Yora could feel the pain, his shoulder throbbed, his chest heaved. But he raised his lance and struck cleanly, catching Beristan across the chest. The older man didn't flinch or move at all. Instead, he simply turned and readied himself for another charge. Yora almost collapsed in disbelief. Was it all a show? Was Beristan not hurt? Did it even matter? No, he thought, studying himself to ride again. Beristan had faced epic justs before, none more legendary than the one at Harrenhal, where he had broken 6 lances before his prince had unhorsed him. Every time he recalled that moment, he wondered how differently things might have turned out if he had been victorious. Would Ashera have been happy to be crowned by him? Would his prince now be king? He shook off the memories as his horse charged down the field, the lance feeling lighter in his hands than he had anticipated. He struck again, watching as Ser Yora slipped but managed to stay on his horse. Beristan nodded to him and lined up for another tilt. As he rode past the pavilion, he caught sight of the king, as intoxicated as ever, and the queen, looking at everyone with disdain, her son mirroring her expression. He then turned to see Ser Jaime and his young squire watching intently. The young man smiled at him, and Beristan nearly lost his balance in surprise. He glanced at the boy again, and the light caught his dark gray eyes, which almost looked indigo. It took his breath away. Shaking his head to clear his thoughts, he picked up his lance and prepared for the tilt ahead. Yora had nearly fallen, his dreams almost slipping away. He looked down at the ribbon tied around his wrist and steeled his resolve. This time, he thought, as he began to ride down the alley, his eyes locked on the man standing between him and victory. With every ounce of energy he had, he charged forward, and to his amazement, Ser Beristan fell. "Your graces, my lord and ladies, the winner of the joust, Ser Yora Mormont." He barely heard the cheers of the crowd, only acknowledging the handshake with Ser Beristan as he made his way to where the garland lay. As it was placed on the end of his lance, he rode toward her, extending the lance and allowing the garland to fall into her lap. "Lady Liness, I name you the Queen of Love and Beauty," he declared. The crowd erupted, and his heart soared as she smiled and placed the crown upon her head.